Abortion Ethics in a Nutshell, a pro-both tour of the moral arguments by Dr. Matt Deaton. Chapter 4. Rate that abortion.
Please score the following scenarios on a scale of 0 to 5. Don't worry about what you're supposed to think or what others might think. This doubles as a self-honesty test. Simply reflect and mark your best guess estimates, ideally in pencil. If you tend to lean pro-choice, zeros are for cases where the reasons are the least compelling, even if you'd still support the pregnant woman if she chose to abort. 5s, however, are the gold standard, reserved for cases where the abortion would be unquestionably justifiable. For everything in between, use 1s, 2s, 3s, 4s, and decimals if you like. If you're inclined to lean pro-life, 5s are for cases when aborting would be most understandable, most forgivable, even if still ultimately wrong. 0s are for the worst of the worst, the clearest cases of an unethical, immoral abortion. Use scores in between according to the details. The honesty required here means no self-censorship. You need to clarify what you currently believe, even if you can't fully explain why, and to get a general idea of which details seem to make a moral difference. We'll unpack the why later.
A.
Amanda's pregnancy is the result of rape.
B.
Bianca's pregnancy is the result of rape, and she is a known prostitute. Note, you may be thinking, what does her occupation have to do with it? The answer, maybe nothing. That's for you to decide. Reflect and score accordingly.
C.
Celeste's pregnancy is the result of rape. She is 13 years old, and the rapist is her mother's boyfriend.
D.
Daniela's pregnancy is the result of rape, and she has waited until 23 weeks gestational age to request an abortion. Note, according to the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, at 23 weeks, a UDH would have roughly a 25% chance of surviving with neonatal intensive care, though the child would likely suffer disabilities including, quote, cerebral palsy, blindness, profound hearing loss, end quote, or significant developmental delays. For UDHs born a week earlier, at 22 weeks, researchers found that, quote, death rates were 97 to 98%, with just 1% surviving without neurodevelopmental impairment, end quote. And for UDHs born a week later at 24 weeks, quote, 55% of neonates survived and 32% survived without evidence of neurodevelopmental impairment, end quote. A UDH at 23 weeks would also have the beginnings of a nervous system, but experts disagree over whether it would be able to perceive pain. If genuine pain requires self-reflection, its cortex wouldn't be sufficiently developed until the 3rd trimester. But if raw sensations alone count, pain could be perceivable as early as 12 weeks.
E.
Elaine claims that the pregnancy was the result of rape, but the father, Eddie, claims she agreed to becoming pregnant, and he wants to take the child to raise himself.
F.
Faith acknowledges that she and her boyfriend, Fernando, planned the pregnancy, but she has changed her mind and wants an abortion. Fernando insists that Faith continue the pregnancy and offers to take the child to raise himself.
G.
Gail is in early pregnancy and has invasive cancer of the cervix. If her uterus is removed promptly, she has a good chance of survival. The operation will result in the death of the UDH, whose development would otherwise be normal.
H.
Same as G, except Hannah doesn't want an abortion, preferring to run the risk of a spread of the cancer rather than to kill the UDH. Her husband Henry, however, urges that she have the hysterectomy, insisting that he and their 3 existing children, Holly, Harry, and Helio, need her to live.
I.
Genetic screening of parents Ingrid and Ivan reveals that their male offspring have a 50% chance of being born with hemophilia, a condition that inhibits blood clotting and can cause joint pain, nosebleeds, and increased susceptibility to bleeding into the brain. Amniocentesis shows that this UDH is male.
J.
Genetic screening of parents J and Janelle reveals that their female offspring have a 25% chance of a disorder which produces severe mental handicaps. Amniocentesis shows that this UDH is female.
K.
Amniocentesis at week 6 reveals that Kathy's UDH has Tay-Sachs disease, a fatal genetic condition which causes the progressive loss of senses and mobility, leading to paralysis and death in early childhood.
L.
Same as K, except that the lab mistakenly delayed release of LaToya's amniocentesis results until 23 weeks gestational age. Note, it's easy to fall into a binary trap. If you're scoring all of these zeros or all fives, please take a break and start over. Shooting deer for sport is justifiable. Shooting deer for food is more justifiable. Stealing an apple from a grocery store is wrong. Stealing a homeless man's only apple is more wrong. Abortions are similarly more or less justifiable, more or less wrong. Also, if a scenario isn't providing as many details as you'd like, invent some, make a note, and score. Assuming this, I'd score it a 3. If instead assuming that, I'd score it a 4.
M.
A baby would place a severe financial strain on parents Michael and Michaela, who already have 4 children, Miranda, Melanie, Matthew, and Martin. In spite of Michael working 2 jobs and Michaela taking work when she can, they are barely able to afford food, housing, and clothing.
N.
Nadia is in early pregnancy and is suffering from chronic hypertensive heart disease associated with severe renal insufficiency. If she continues to gestate, she may die from the increased demands on her heart and kidneys. Although aborting would kill the UDH, its chances for survival are already slight given Nadia's health problems.
O.
Ophelia became pregnant due to contraceptive failure.
P.
Petra became pregnant due to contraceptive failure, plus having a baby at this time would seriously jeopardize her career goals.
Q.
Having a baby at this time would seriously jeopardize Quinn's career goals, but she and Father Quantrill did not use any form of contraception.
R.
Parents Roberta and Roberto hadn't used contraceptives because they had been told Roberta was infertile.
S.
Sarah's pregnancy is the result of an extramarital affair. Husband Salim insists on an abortion as a condition of remaining married.
T.
Tasha's pregnancy is the result of an extramarital affair. Husband Tobias has somewhat reluctantly agreed to keep the child, but Tasha believes the child would be a constant cause of marital disharmony, so is requesting an abortion to preserve the marriage.
U.
Ursula's husband Uriah left her before she learned that she is pregnant. Ursula states, and her psychiatrist agrees, that she cannot cope with the pregnancy right now.
V.
Velma left her husband Vinny and instituted divorce proceedings before she learned that she is pregnant. She stated, quote, "I'll be damned if I give Vinny the satisfaction of becoming a father," end quote. Note: are you starting to get a feel for which details seem to make a moral difference, even if you can't articulate why? Good. We'll organize and think them through soon.
W.
Winona has serious health problems such that continuing the pregnancy would probably leave her in chronic poor health for the rest of her life, although it would not shorten her life expectancy.
X.
Xena is in prolonged obstructed labor. For various reasons, a cesarean section is not an option, and she will die unless a craniotomy, a procedure in which the UDH's head is crushed, is performed. If a craniotomy is not performed and Xena dies from uterine rupture or exhaustion, the UDH would likely die also.
Y.
The pregnancy is normal, but parents Yasmin and Yasir are in a country where population is strictly controlled. If they allow the pregnancy to continue, they will suffer widespread social disapproval and economic sanctions.
Z.
Amniocentesis reveals that the UDH is female, but parents Zelda and Zach want their firstborn to be male. Note, hang in there, only 10 more.
A.
Amniocentesis reveals that the UDH is male, and parents Arsheen and Aaron stand to lose a large inheritance unless their firstborn is female.
B.
Just before she learned that she is pregnant, Barbara left her husband Brad, quit her job, and made a career move for which she had been planning for several years. Continuing the pregnancy would disrupt that plan, which might derail her career aspirations irreversibly.
C.
Constance has a pre-viable pregnancy developing in one of her fallopian tubes instead of her uterus, an ectopic pregnancy. If an operation is not performed to excise the UDH or remove the tube containing it, she may die from spontaneous tubal rupture. Although the operation would kill the UDH, it is extremely unlikely it could in any case survive.
D.
Just before Daisha learned that she is pregnant, she made reservations for a long-dreamed-of trip around the world. If she continues the pregnancy, she will miss out on the trip and lose a substantial deposit.
E.
Same as DD, except Eva will be accompanied by her mother Esther, who is dying of cancer and whose last wish is to take this trip with Eva.
F.
Same as DD, except Florencia is inclined to cancel the trip and gestate. However, her husband Fabio wants her to abort and take the trip to minimize the impact on their finances.
G.
Gabby is a heroin addict and unlikely to agree to rehabilitation if the pregnancy continues.
H.
Father Hank is a heroin addict and unlikely to agree to rehabilitation if the pregnancy continues, though he promises to do so if Mother Hanita aborts.
I.
No contraception was used because neither young Isabel nor her boyfriend Ignacio planned to, quote, go all the way. Having a baby now would seriously disrupt Isabel's plans for finishing college and beginning her chosen career.
J.
Same as II, except young Janet has had 2 previous abortions for the same reason.
Initial analysis.
Which scenarios did you find toughest to score? Easiest? Which were the most enlightening? Most awkward? You may have noticed that certain details seem to make a moral difference. These might have included the nature of the conception, consensual, forced, intentional, or accidental, the pregnancy's impact on the mother, to her health, her life, her relationships and plans, the UDH's stage of development, early, late, somewhere between, the resulting child's likely quality of life, their health, family situation, general prospects for happiness, the desires of the father, and even impacts on third parties. We'll explore how much weight to assign each of these in later chapters. However, your thinking is likely evolving already. Before a bioethics professor gave this exercise to me, I'd never considered half of these scenarios. Abortion suddenly became complex, and the old pro-choice versus pro-life paradigm strikingly inadequate. Course slogans work great on protest signs, but for real cases in the real world, not so much. Briefly revisit the situations that gave you the most pause. If you're reluctant to change your scores, know that revising for good reason is a mark of maturity, not weakness. Question the motives of anyone who tells you otherwise. My own scores aren't set in stone, because however much I think I know, I can always learn more.